I'm a V expert, and what I'm about to show you is an interactive session. You won't see my face, unfortunately. That's a good thing. But you do get to see the screen, which I will show you ESX Top running live. And we will talk about the why, the what, and the how. First of all, let's start with the why. Why would you want to use ESX Top? Well, imagine a situation where you get a call from your application owner saying performance is slow for the virtual machine. What do? You try to leverage your skill sets in managing a VMware environment and try to leverage what products that are out there that are free. So one of the free products out there is vCenter Operations Manager. So that is a single pane of glass management for your entire virtual infrastructure. And the good news for that is you don't have to pay anything extra for that piece of the software, at least the foundation edition. So it gets shipped with every single edition of vSphere, even the foundation one. All right. So with that, you log into vCenter Operations Manager, you take a look at the virtual machine from the Operations tab, and it tells you, hey, it's CPU bound. Then you might want to dig deeper into a interactive shell in ESX to find out what is going on, right? So essentially, that's what you want to use ESX Top for, is to drill down on specific ESX server or specific virtual machine or specific network adapter, specific data stores, you name it. All the managed objects from compute network to storage, port groups, data stores, virtual machines, you get visibility into the performance aspect live, okay? So to run it, you simply SSH to an ESX iBox and type ESX Top, and this screen will show up. Okay, so it looks creepy at first, but nothing to be panicked about. So if you want to look at CPU performance information, you can simply look at the default screen. And the refresh interval for ESX Top by default is every 5 seconds. If you want to change that, which I recommend as a good practice, is to change that to 2 seconds. So the screen gets refreshed faster, so you can look at the live data better without having to wait for too damn long. Okay, so to do that, you type the S command, and then you see this little black icon here saying seconds to delay. Just type 2 and press enter. Then pretty much the screen will start refreshing at 2-second interval. Okay, and a lot of people look at the CPU utilization across all of their CPUs for a given ESX server, and they see sometimes 90% utilization across all physical processors. There's really nothing wrong with that. What you should really look at, aside from the utilization, is this specific field right here, percentage ready. Essentially what that value gives you is the amount of time the virtual machine spends waiting for VM kernel to schedule a physical processor for the CPU from the virtual machine. Again, just to repeat, percentage ready for CPU is the amount of time the virtual machine vCPU has to wait for VM kernel to schedule threads on the actual physical CPUs. Anything that's near or more than double digit, let's say 10% CPU ready, you should be concerned. That means your server is CPU bound, all right? VM kernel is not getting enough CPU cycles that are free to accommodate the requests coming from the virtual machine, all right? So you see all these virtual machines here listed, including all of the VMware helper worlds. All right, so the real virtual machines I have on my box here is SharePoint, and then vCenter Server, and the Analytics VM. Okay, so these are the VMs that you care about. Be sure to look at the CPU percentage ready value for the virtual machines from CPU perspective. Now, the next thing is, let's say vCenter Operations Manager says your virtual machine is memory bound. No worries, we can take a look at how the virtual machines are performing based on the memory stats. All right, I apologize for this little pop-up. You can press M to switch to the memory side of things to look at whether the virtual machines are swapping. Okay, so a couple of things to note here. We have a lot of fields to look out for, but the key ones, the key takeaway from here is whether VM kernel is swapping. Okay, it's okay for the virtual machine balloon driver to get inflated to free up memory for other virtual machines that might find a good use for it. But if the VM kernel is swapping, all right, if this value is not 0, then very likely you have a situation where your ESX server is memory bound or suggested by vCenter Operations Manager. Okay, on a per virtual machine basis, you can certainly take a look at the virtual machine highlighted here in my example, SharePoint database server, and look at whether, see, there is a swap SWR per second and SWW per second. So that means swap read from disk and swap write into disk. So if you see a non-zero value for SWR per second and SWW per second, then very likelihood of having memory exhaustion on your ESX server. So be sure to look into that. Okay, so there goes memory. Okay, and then there's CPU, memory, and what about networking? Fine, networking, you press N, which stands for networking, and you get networking statistics on a per port group level. All right, so I have the management port group, I have the VM kernel NICs for iSCSI, and then a shadow of each and every single VM NIC in your infrastructure. So what you want to look at here is the package drop per second for transmit and receive. So if you're seeing packet drops, so be in the lookout for too much network traffic or too much CPU utilization in the ESX server, or even a potential bad network port connected to the VM NIC or a potential bad NIC in your ESX server. So there goes our CPU, memory, networking. Now, what about storage? Storage, there are a couple commands. From a HBA perspective, you type D as in David. So D as in David for disk level statistics. So this will give you not per virtual machine VMDK, not per individual volume, but per HBA level. If you use iSCSI like I do, then you'll see your local HBA and VM HBA 32. Some hosts will have 34, 37. Then it gives you an aggregated amount of IOPS, right? Commands per second, and then that's the total read and write per second, and then it breaks down to read and write per second, and then also megabytes read and write per second. So the megabytes measurement for throughput from storage perspective usually ties to sequential I/O. All right, random I/O always look at the commands per second, right? Means IOPS. Okay, be sure to keep that in mind. And the next question you might have is, well, what about individual VMDK level statistics? You can certainly do that by typing V as in Victor. And in here, I have 3 actual virtual machines running. And this will show you the actual IOPS on a per VMDK basis. And your next question might be, what if I have multiple VMDKs per virtual machine? Not a problem. You type E as in Edward to expand, and based on the ID that is shown here, you can just type in, let's say for my SharePoint database server, I type in 117.2.160, and it's going to show me every single one of the VMDK that is attached to my virtual machine, as well as the individual IOPS, reads and writes, as well as the megabyte per second throughput. All right, so there goes the per virtual machine VMDK level stat information. Now, what about per volume? You can certainly do that as well using ESX Top. Type U as in umbrella. That will give you all of the volumes presented to the ESX server. And in here, you can further diagnose whether there's an active queue that's queued up for I/O commands to the volume, and it gives you the ability to look at read and write I/O as well as latency. Okay, so all in all, I just went through how to troubleshoot your ESX server and virtual machine performance using ESX Top to look at CPU stats, memory stats, networking stats, storage stats on a per volume level, per VMDK level, as well as per HBA level. Now, let's go back to the original screen. You might be wondering, what are all these crap laying out here? Should I care about them? It's kind of make everything convoluted and too much information here. Well, there's an unsupported or experimentally supported command out here called export entity. Okay, so what this does, it gives you the ability to export the entity that ESX Top shows into a temporary file. Let's call it foobar. And if I open up foobar, you're going to see everything that ESX manages. Let's say I only care about my SharePoint virtual machine. what you do is you find the entities as well as the entry, and then you create another file, toolbar filter, and then paste that in here and get rid of the junk that you don't want. And then you rerun ESX top by importing the entity. Full bar filter. There we go. Much better screen, isn't it? You only get visibility into the virtual machine that you care about in terms of CPU, memory, networking. All right. For networking, I didn't select it yet, but you get the point. All right. So be sure to check out the ESX top -export entity as well as -import entity command, experimentally supported. And that's it. It's a wrap for today. ESX top, my friend. See you later. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.